What is up, Fight fans? I am Jason Burgos for SportsNot.com, and I have the great pleasure of being joined by one of the true influencers of the sport of MMA. He has been a driving force since the inception of the Professional Fighters League and a key part of the league's continued rise, and that is PFL President Ray Sefo. Senor Sefo, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you for having me.
So, the 2023 playoffs are on the horizon, and I wanted to focus on the league's kind of journey to this point because there were a lot of doubters if the PFL could even get to a season 5. So, you were part of this from day one. You have been around this industry a very long time, saw a lot of companies come and go, the Bulldogs, the Lead XCs and stuff like that. In ways, are you even a little surprised that PFL has been able to thrive, and be around as many as 5 seasons? Did you even have any doubts or concerns going into it, especially because it's a new format for MMA at the time? Like I mentioned, you've seen companies come and go. Did you even man, I don't know. I feel good, but I don't know.
I'm not surprised, but I am surprised on how fast it's growing.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised that it was going to grow because when I look back at the start of WSOF, I had Andre Arlovsky, Jake Shields, John Fitch, some big names, Anthony Johnson, may he rest in peace.
Yeah.
So these guys were available at the time. And so, for me, I knew it was going to work. It was just a matter of us doing the right things. And we did that. And of course, where it is today, again, like I said, I'm not surprised where we are, but I am surprised on how fast we've grown. Which is, again, credit to the amazing work of, the PFL team. And I'm very obviously grateful and thankful that we're growing the way we're growing. And we are continuing to give fighters opportunities as, there's so many fighters out there that don't get that opportunity to get on a big show. So we're very fortunate and very glad and very grateful that we are where we are today.
And I'm glad you mentioned the PFL's predecessor, World Series of Fighting, because I think a lot of people forget about it now because it's been so long since the change, the rebranding, and then
Right.
PFL, like you said, has grown so quickly. It's quickly overshadowed that past of World Series of Fighting.
Right.
When the talk was of rebranding and all that kind of stuff, how early in those conversations of that switch was the idea of the season format, playoffs, all this kind of thing? How early on was that? And then also, just because you were a part of World Series of Fighting, what were the mistakes you made and the team made in that company that really played as a key learning thing when it became PFL and has been so important in PFL's growth?
Well, the season in itself is, I actually put that together
Hmm.
from day one. And the, the reason why I called it World Series of Fighting at the time was because there was going to be this World $1 million tournament. And so, again, these are notes that I put together 9 months prior to kicking off WSOF. Um, and we had a gentleman that came on board through another business partner at the time and said that he was going to put in, $100 million. And so when that was presented to me, here's the reason why the $1 million tournament started. Because our first press conference was the $1 million tournament. And then along the way, certain things happened. And, you live and you learn. People say things, and when the crunch comes to the crunch, it's just words. And so we ended up, going with the original format of a promotion instead of a league. And
Mm.
then when our new partners that came on board with Don Davis and the team, um, they actually allowed us to do the season the way it was
Mm.
and how I had envisioned it from day one. And so, again, thanks to Don and the team and the whole PFL team that's allowed everybody to work hand in hand, work together to be able to put PFL on the world scale. And so, um, But yeah, it was, and how I came up with the name Words of Fighting was I happened to be flicking through TV and Words of Poker was on, and I was like, that's
Yeah.
the name of Words of the league, be Words of Fighting instead of Words of Poker, and that's how I came up with the name, and
Yeah.
so again, it was, I put this together 9 months prior to us starting WSOF.
Mm.
Thank God to our team today that it's allowed us to put that format into action. That has allowed, the first MMA league in the history of MMA.
Yeah.
And where we are today is absolutely, truly amazing. And like I said, I'm grateful and I thank the good Lord every day we're here and we're here to stay.
Were there any like mistakes in the process and helping to run World Series of Fighting? And, like, yeah, that was a big moment. Should have did this. Should have zigged when I zagged, and it's paid off big time and helping to run the PFL.
Yeah, you know, there were certain people that came on board that I had trusted, and obviously their mindset wasn't the same as mine.
Mm.
And my mindset was exactly where PFL is today, was to continue to grow the company and the league, and also allowed uh, and continue to give fighters opportunities, to come into the league, earnings throughout the season, and then of course winning the $1 million in the championship. Um, and so I got to meet, and a lot of these people came through another business partner of mine at the time, and now they're not part of the season, part of PFL anymore. And of course, again, that all got cleaned up before PFL started.
Mm.
And, but yeah, so in terms of learning, yeah, there was a lot of things that went on that allowed me to kind of go, okay, well, um, I just got to be a little bit more careful in terms of who is involved and whatnot.
Mm.
And of course, when you have a team like the team that we have today from the PFL, everybody's mindset and goal and vision is exactly the same. And so, uh, hence the reason why PFL is where it is today, and it's
And you
continuing to
sort of
grow.
mentioned it in one of the answers to the previous questions, but were there people, because you, like I mentioned, you've been around this industry a very long time, even before MMA, kickboxing, and stuff like that, the fight industry in general, long time
Right.
coach, still a coach now. Were there people, friends, and people that you trust and care about their opinion, that when this all started, when it became PFL, the league, and all the concepts that you wanted to put in play, were there people like, I don't know, right? This it seems like weird, and you had to kind of, turn off that noise and believe in the vision and go forward with it.
Yeah, absolutely. There were certain people that were in the team at that time that, um, over time you got to see that their vision was the same as mine, and
Mm.
so, again, like I said, we've dealt with that, we've learned from it, and we continue to move forward. And I think Melissa and I are probably the two original leftover from back
Wow.
in those days.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's and Melissa Rodriguez she's an amazing person, great worker, and again she believed in the vision, and she's still part of the team today.
Now, for people watching this on YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, comment on the thoughts on our Well, it conversation. isn't the case anymore. I covered those early PFL seasons, and part of the draw in those first seasons was like that old school vibe of multiple fights in one night for the playoffs. Eventually, you
Right.
guys went away from it. Talk to me about the early concerns of maybe the two fights in one night concept you did, and like what were the biggest problems in it and running it that made you say, okay, yeah, we have to get away from this and we have to do something a little bit more what are people used to, and maybe while fighters didn't complain in the season, was there complaints from fighters about the playoff format?
No, they love the playoff formats.
Hmm.
Every fighter, and so there's no complaints whatsoever in terms of the format. And we didn't go away from it because of any other reason other than COVID. Um,
Ah,
that's
okay.
the only reason why we ended up. going with one fight for the playoffs instead of two, um, is because of COVID. And of course, we then had to cut down the amount of fighters because there was so much. Obviously, at that time, there was so much restrictions in regards to COVID and so on. So, you know, in my opinion, eventually, I think we will get back to the two fights in one night
Okay.
because that's again one of the reasons why it separates us from everyone else.
Yeah.
It's because of the tournament format. It's because of how it's done and how fighters move on. Of course, you win, you move forward. You lose, you go home. You know, so. Um, but yeah, at some point, I think the team will sit down again and discuss that and see where we go from there. But as it is now, it works, and we're gonna continue to do and innovate certain things that it's gonna allow the league to grow.
The PFL had some wild moments because of those two fights and one night playoff years, and fighters jumping back into second fights maybe after being eliminated, like Chris Curtis in 2019. That was a perfect example of one of those
Right.
situations. What was it like backstage for situations like that? Someone's injured, someone's like, no, I can fight, and maybe a medical staff say, no, you can't, sorry, you can't. Like, especially being in charge of that, having to deal with the personalities, the emotions of us, all this money on the line. You win a certain amount of money playoffs, you get this championship $1 million fight. Like, are there some really standout stories from those particular years that like you just never forget, just wild backstage stuff?
Yeah, I mean those wild things happens all the time. But Chris Cage, since you named Chris, Chris was
Yeah.
one of the wild ones because um, he loses in the first in the quarter sorry in the first fight of the playoffs, the quarterfinals of the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs, and by decision, and then he's actually getting he's getting some food, I believe, and then I get told that Maga was sick, wasn't feeling well at all, and that the doctors decided that he wasn't going to continue. So I run out the back. I'm looking for Chris in his changing room. He's not there. He's in getting food. I'm like, brother, what are you doing? You got to get back there and get changed. You're up. Maga's out. You're in. And he said, what? So Chris rushes back into his changing room, throws his gears back on, and and did the walk. And so um, those are moments for TV, if you will, because
Mm-hmm.
you just don't know.
Yeah.
And I've seen it throughout my career where the loser could lose and the winner can't continue. The loser comes in there and he ends up going right to the finals. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's the excitement of what the season is. It ain't over until it's over.
Yeah. And I have no doubt, being in the position you're in, it's difficult, and you're dealing with personalities and everything. Have there ever been really tough spots where, like either the playoffs, maybe a season, the fighter is injured, medical staff saying no, and like you really have to be this kind of leader and make these tough choices and kind of diffuse emotions and personalities? Has there ever been moments like that where maybe even in ways that strained relationships, but you had to do what you had to do for the best interest of the fighter and the league?
Well, fortunately, it's never been a situation where um, it couldn't be worked out, if you will.
Okay.
The Part of that is the good thing also about the season is that there's if the let's say if Chris couldn't continue, then it would be the second guy to Chris's opponent,
Yeah.
sorry, to the playoffs that will also have the opportunity to step forward.
Yeah.
Now, worst case scenario is nobody is healthy enough to go through. So then, in that case, Ray would have had a walkover to get to the championship. But yeah, no, there's an answer to all the you know um, difficulties within the season. There's always this part and this part that eventually somebody's going to be going through to the championship.
Did that, like, because this is a concept you've always had in your mind, but when you are going forward with it and you kind of have to put in all, like, once it becomes real, you have to put in all these fail states and oh, this happens, this
Right.
that. How long did that process go through, and has there ever been tweaks in that in terms of like well, okay, you have this idea, but when you actually go through this, okay, what happens if this happens? We do this. If this happens, you do this. Like, how long was just that process of the fail safe for the season, championship, playoffs? Like, how long did that take?
Well, I always said it was going to take at least 5 or more years to continue to, tweak certain
Yeah.
things here and there, and which we've done. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? With the help of Jim Branson and Jim and Josh and a couple of, and Pete and myself and a couple of the team members within the fight operations team, um, that, when there's certain things that needs to be tweaked, we sit down, we talk about it, and then we kind of put it all together. But yeah, I mean, again, this is our fifth season, and we feel like, we've done a few tweaks here and there. And it won't surprise me if we end up doing more within the next year or two, but that's how we continue to evolve as well as continue to grow.
Is there in this mad MMA scientist mind of yours, is there another big idea like, man, this is the next one, this is the one I just saw it on a commercial or billboard, this in my spawn, is there something like on the horizon that is the next thing you want to see in the PFL?
Um, I mean, obviously, right now, there's a lot of things in the works within the national. I can't
Yeah.
go into it, but there's a lot of great things, a lot of great things that's coming. And so, um, when we're allowed to talk about it, you definitely know about it.
So a lot of buzz around the PFL and going to season 5, like I mentioned. Big plans for pay-per-views more often. Francis Ngannou, Jake Paul. Going to that idea of how people were like, I don't know about this, Ray. This is weird. 5 seasons later, dealing with what you guys had to, one of the leagues that had to cancel because of the pandemic. It just came right at the time when that season was going to start, and you rebounded and gone bigger and better and done more. Is there that flip side now? There, as a coach that's still a top coach now, there's fighters and managers that are coming to you like, man, Ray, I mean, like my guy, or I want to be a part of PFL. Like, has the perception changed now? You're like, whoa, 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 I'll get to you when I get to you because you didn't want to talk to me 5 years ago.
Right, right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I have, like, in the gym, when I'm in the gym, whether I'm training or coaching, there's endless amount of people coming up and pitching their fighters and this person and that person,
Yeah.
which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's and then in terms of emails, and of course we're in the world of social media where you know uh, I open up, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or whatever. There's hundreds and hundreds of messages from fighters from all over the world.
Yeah, I
So
bet,
it's been
man.
fun because again, it's good when you're getting those calls and people reaching out because again, there's so many different avenues to get to the season
Yeah.
today. For example, PFL Europe, PFL MENA, and PFL Africa is kicking off in 2024, as well as things are still in the works, not 100% confirmed yet, but it looks like Oceania, down under, Australia, New Zealand,
Okay.
that's kicking off either late 24 or be 25. So there's so many things that's happening. The Challenger Series itself. So there's different avenues that that fighters can actually get into the season. Perfect example is Braga, Gabriel Braga, who came through the Challenger Series,
Yeah.
and now he's in the playoffs. And so it's great to see. I mean, Impa as well. Also is another guy, light heavyweight,
Yeah. Yep.
who's going to be in the playoffs. You know, just to name a few of those guys that came through the Challenger Series, uh, and now they're in the playoffs, and there's a high possibility they'll go to the championship.
Again, if you're watching this, please dig in the conversation, like, share, subscribe, comment below. Let us know what you think of all these things going on PFL. Two more questions left. PFL makes a point of showcasing their celebrity investors when there is a new round of investment. How huge is that? Because, yeah, you can do these tweaks and you can bring in this talent and stuff like that, but This is a tough business to have a promotion in, and especially with one promotion take up such a large share in all the action, it's even harder now more than ever. How huge has the investment been in the league's like staying power and being able to last and grow and thrive? Was there ever times, maybe especially in those early years, maybe around the pandemic, where it was tough, where it was like, man, I'm not sure if this is gonna last. Like, we need an investment, and was that kind of the big difference between PFL and World Series of Fighting?
Oh yeah, massive difference. Yeah, night and day. Yeah. If you had asked me that in WSOF days, I would have been like, yeah, no, I was literally biting my nails. No, again, credit to Don Davis and Pete Murray and Jim Branson, of course, the rest of the team, who um, that's their, specialty, if you will. And so, I'm very confident when those guys are, at the helm in terms of dealing with that sort of scenario
Yeah.
and investors and so on. They do a great job. They're amazing what they do. And again, I'm absolutely, grateful and thankful that the team that we have is the team that we have because we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for the whole
Yeah.
PFL team. So I'm very grateful to those guys.
All right, last question. One of the big stories in the sport right now is on Bellator's future, and PFL is reportedly interested in buying it. Obviously, the PC answer is PFL doesn't need Bellator. The roster is fine. We're going to grow. We're going to survive. But nevertheless, getting that roster really seems like the final step where PFL, no doubt, number two in the world, and could just really be a legitimate inside the industry threat and real competition to the UFC that we haven't seen in a long time. Is that something you are monitoring closely, pulling for, to make your job that much more exciting? Or it's like, I've been around this game long time, heard a lot of stuff. I'll believe it when I see it.
All I can say at the moment, everything you've said is true. But all I can say at the moment is that there has been great discussions, and there are more discussions to be had. Um, but yes, that is moving forward, and those discussions are moving forward.